All right, John Diniz, welcome to this deep dive, and it's all for you.
That's right. All about you, John. We're zeroing in on your English VIP class with Paulo at Academia BSB.
We've got your notes, your recent class notes, and we're going to use those as our roadmap.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that everything that you covered with Paulo is really going to stick.
We're going to try to reinforce all of it for you so you're ready for those big exams.
Exactly like the university entrance exam, the ESSET TOEFL.
Yeah, all those. We're going to make sure that you're ready.
And that you feel really confident.
Yes, confident. And we're going to make use of a couple of things here.
Yes, we're going to be pulling some things in.
First and foremost, your class notes.
Absolutely, John. Those are going to be our guide.
And we're also going to bring in some things from your grammar materials.
Yes, those are going to help us out.
And also the transcript from that video that we watched together.
Yes, a lot of fun stuff to work with.
But really what we want to focus on is your work, and especially
the effort that you put in by giving us your personal examples.
Yes, let's celebrate that.
Absolutely.
So, John, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Let's start with this new vocabulary.
Yes, you have a section here in your notes about new vocabulary.
So we see, additionally,
we see adding, we see plus.
More, to allow equals to give permission.
To not allow equals to forbid.
And I don't agree equals I disagree.
That's a great list of new vocabulary.
It is, yeah. So let's start with additionally.
Yeah.
So you might say something like, the museum was fascinating, and additionally, it had a great cafe where we could discuss what we saw.
Perfect example.
You know, so if it just adds an extra piece of information.
Yeah, and additionally, it's a more formal way of saying also or as well.
Yeah, right. So what about adding?
So for adding, you can imagine Paula saying something like, I am adding more detail to my explanation of the difference between affect and effect.
Right. So it's the action of putting something in or including something.
Precisely.
Yeah. Okay. Now, plus, this is a handy one.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one. A lot of students like to use this.
Yeah. So, for example, you might say, I studied vocabulary for an hour, plus I did some listening practice.
Yeah. And it's a nice informal way to connect those two ideas.
Right. And then more. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
You know, could you give me more examples of how to use the past participle?
Exactly.
Straightforward. Okay, so deed. Now, this is an interesting one.
Deed is a good one.
So I think this one often implies, you know, an action that has like a moral dimension to it.
Yes, often a positive action.
Like it's significant in some way.
Yes, like if you help an elderly person cross the street, that would be considered a good deed.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
but it has that kind of sense of, you know, an action with weight behind it.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then we have to allow, which, as you noted in your notes, means to give permission.
Exactly.
So you could say something like, my parents allow me to watch one movie after I finished my homework.
Right.
And then the opposite, to not allow, means to forbid.
Exactly.
So the school does not allow students to bring snacks into the library.
Right.
Very clear, very good. And finally, I don't agree.
Yeah.
Which is a more polite way, I guess, of saying I disagree.
Absolutely.
So I don't agree with that suggestion. Perhaps we could consider another approach.
Perfect.
So, John, as you hear these words, think about, you know, how you could use them.
Yeah, in your own life.
In your daily life.
Right. Situations where you might say these words and really making those personal connections, because that's going to help you remember them.
That's right. Okay. John, the next section in your notes is all about pronunciation pairs.
This is a good one. Pronunciation is so important.
It is very important for clear communication.
Absolutely. And you have some really good examples here.
I think you picked some really good ones here.
Yeah.
You've got did versus deed.
Yes.
Beer versus bear.
Yeah.
And world versus word.
Wow, those are some tricky ones.
They are tricky because those tiny little sound differences make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
As to what word you're actually saying.
Exactly.
So let's start with did and deed.
Okay.
So did has that short I sound.
Right, like in the word bit.
Did, exactly. And then deed uses that longer E sound.
Like the E in C.
Deed.
And you can really feel how your mouth changes shape.
Yeah, you have to open up more for deed.
Exactly.
So for did, you know, like, did you understand the lesson?
Exactly. And then deed, volunteering at the animal shelter is a kind deed.
Right. So that deed is a bit longer.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to beer versus bear.
Oh, this is a classic.
Yeah, so beer, that lovely drink,
Yeah.
uses that long E sound again.
Yes, like indeed or see.
Beer.
Yeah.
You got, and the bear, the animal has the shorter E sound.
Right, like in bed.
Bear.
Bear.
So very different.
Bear.
Yeah. I'd like a glass of beer, please.
Right.
versus we saw a bear during our hike.
Yeah, and that short E sound in bear is really important.
That's what makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
And then the last one, world versus word.
Yeah, this one can be really tough.
Especially, I think, for, Portuguese speakers.
You have some...
So world has a more pronounced R sound towards the end.
Yes, you can really hear that R.
Yeah, and that vowel sound in the middle is kind of different.
It's almost like a or sound, like in burn.
World. So you can almost feel your tongue curling up a little bit.
Absolutely.
When you say world.
Yeah.
And then word has that shorter vowel sound.
Like the IR in bird.
Word.
Yeah.
Word. It's like the big world out there full of opportunities.
Right.
Can I have a word with you after class?
Yeah.
It's very different.
And you can really hear that difference in the R sound, too.
I noticed for world, my tongue is a lot more active.
Absolutely. It's really working hard.
It's working hard to get that R sound out.
Exactly.
So, John, a really helpful exercise you could try is saying these words many times.
Yeah, maybe even recording yourself so you can hear the difference.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because sometimes we don't hear those subtle differences.
Exactly.
When we're just, speaking normally.
Right.
So that can be really, really helpful.
And it can be fun, too.
It can be fun. All right, so, John, let's move on to the video you watched.
Oh, yeah, the video.
So do you remember any of the experiences that really stood out to you?
I do, and you actually made a list of them in your notes.
Yeah, that's right.
So I have it right here. We have sledging with husky dogs in Finland.
Yes.
Skydiving in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Eating at a 5-star restaurant.
Okay.
Being strapped to the outside of a plane.
That's wing walking.
Yes, wing walking.
Wow.
Traveling Route 66.
All right.
Bungee jumping in the Grand Canyon.
Oh, my goodness.
And going swimming with dolphins in the open sea.
Wow, that is quite the list.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety there.
Yeah, I don't even know where I would begin.
I know, right?
Like, they all sound so amazing.
They do.
So let's revisit a couple of us based on the video transcript.
Okay.
So let's start with that husky sledding in Finland. So I remember the narrator saying, absolutely beautiful here. The snow is just like, it's got little bits of crystal all over it, and you can really take it in because the dogs are doing all the hard work.
Yeah, so they really focus on the visual details there.
Yeah, and the feeling of being present in that moment.
Right.
Without having to exert yourself because the dogs are doing the work.
Exactly. And later on, they mentioned how that feeling of exhilaration is so much stronger than just sitting passively.
Right. It's really a unique experience.
Absolutely.
And then there was the wind walking.
Oh, yeah.
So in the video, they shared this really interesting bit of history.
Oh, I remember that.
They said that the craze started when World War I pilots would strap their 4 girlfriends to the outside of their planes to entertain the crowds at air shows.
Wow. That's a really interesting backstory.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that.
Me neither.
Like, that's how wing walking began.
Amazing.
Yeah, and Rebecca, the wing walker that they featured in the video, she described feeling excited, a little bit nervous.
Yeah, it's understandable. Right?
Yeah, before she, got up on the plane.
Absolutely.
So I think those are pretty accurate descriptions of how you would feel.
They are, and it's really interesting to note the adjectives that they use. Beautiful, exhilarating, amazing, excited, nervous.
Yes.
Those are really powerful words for describing these kinds of feelings.
Yes, I noticed that too. Like, the language was very vivid.
Absolutely.
So, John, as you were discussing this video with Paulo, did any particular vocabulary or grammar points come up for you?
Yeah, John, think about that for a moment.
Perhaps, ways to describe your past experiences or express your desire for future adventures.
Yeah.
Like, we know you have that 7 experiences list later on. So it seems like this video really sparked some ideas for you.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
Okay, John, let's look at the next thing in your notes.
Okay.
It says, Unit 67, no article versus...
Right.
So it seems like, there weren't any specific examples here in your notes or mistakes or points of confusion.
It looks like this was just a topic that Paulo introduced.
Yes. Just an introduction.
Right.
And it's a good reminder for you, John, about, how important articles are in English.
Absolutely. Er and el.
Yes, they're small, but they're mighty.
They are. They can really change the meaning of a sentence.
Yeah, so knowing when to use them and when not to use them is really important.
Exactly.
So, John, I'm sure you'll revisit this topic in more detail with Paulo.
Yeah, and if you have any questions about when to use or not use articles...
You should ask him.
Absolutely.
Okay, John. Let's move on to the writing section.
Okay.
So here's where you listed your 7 experiences to do before you die.
Yeah, and Paulo gave you some really helpful feedback.
Yes, he did. So let's go through each one.
Let's do it.
And, just see what Paulo had to say.
Okay.
So the first one, drive a Formula One car.
Wow, what an ambition.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, and that Paolo didn't make any specific notes.
So it seems like that one's grammatically sound.
Yes, it does.
Great job, John.
All right, next one. Surfing huge waves in Portugal.
Oh, another exciting goal.
Yeah, and again, no correction from Paolo.
So it looks good.
Looking good. Okay. Next, to travel around world.
Okay, so Paolo suggested a refinement here.
Yeah.
He suggested to visit the world.
To visit the world.
And he even put correct native.
Yeah, he did.
So he really wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, so I think the nuance here is that traveling around the world often implies a longer journey.
Yes, like a continuous journey.
Yeah, encompassing many, many places.
Right.
Whereas to visit the world is more about, seeing different parts of the globe.
Yes, maybe through different trips or experiences.
Yeah, it's not necessarily one continuous journey.
Exactly.
So it's a subtle but important difference.
Absolutely.
All right, number 4, fight a bear.
Okay, that's a memorable one.
It is. Paolo just listed it, so it seems like he didn't have any grammatical issues with it.
Right.
But it definitely speaks to your adventurous spirit.
It does.
Okay, next. I want to see a wolf in real life.
Oh, cool. And Paolo gave that a thumbs up.
He underlined wolf, so it seems like, he understood your desire to see this particular animal.
Yeah, and he really liked that you added in real life.
Yeah, that really emphasizes it.
Absolutely.
Okay, next, to fly an airplane.
Wow. Another fantastic goal.
Yeah, Paolo didn't offer any corrections.
So that one looks good.
It does. And finally, I want to beat Max Verstappen on the racetrack.
Okay, so Paolo had a correction for this one.
Yeah.
He suggested, I want to beat Max on the first time we meet.
Right. So he said the original wasn't quite right.
Right, for the context of a first meeting.
Yeah, so to beat someone on the racetrack is perfectly fine.
Yes, if you're talking about a race.
If you're actually talking about a race.
Right.
But in the context of meeting someone for the first time.
Yeah, to beat someone means something different.
Yeah, you're not literally going to race against them.
Right.
So it just means to, make a stronger impression or come out on top in that interaction.
Yeah, to outshine them in some way.
Yeah, so it's less about an actual race and more about making a positive and lasting first impression.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to the grammar review section.
Okay.
So here, Paolo was focusing on auxiliary verbs across different tenses.
Right, the helping verbs.
Yes, using examples that you probably talked about in class.
Absolutely.
So he starts with the present simple, and he notes the rule dodos.
Okay.
And your example was, I have homework.
Right?
And just a reminder, John, we always capitalize the pronoun I.
Yeah, always I.
Yeah, so Paolo didn't actually mark this as incorrect.
Yeah, and I have homework is a perfectly correct statement.
It is.
In the present simple.
But it's interesting because, why did he put it under dodos?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think it's because the lesson was probably focusing on forming questions and negative statements in the present simple.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which require those auxiliary verbs do and does.
Exactly.
So, do you have homework?
Right.
I do not have homework.
Yeah.
So while your statement was correct, the underlying concept was about using these auxiliary verbs.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next, the past simple, the rule is did.
Okay.
And your example was you cooked.
Right.
So no mistakes here. A straightforward statement about a completed action in the past.
Perfect.
Okay, past continuous. The rule is to be plus verb plus ing.
Right.
You had 2 examples. You was swimming and they were studying.
Okay.
So Paolo correctly identified you was swimming
Yeah.
and changed it to you were swimming.
Right.
So this is a common area, that learners get tripped up on.
Absolutely.
You have to remember, he, shite was, but you were, we were, they were.
Right. Those are important to remember.
They are important. Your second example, though, they were studying is absolutely correct.
Perfect.
Okay, present, perfect. The rule is have helas plus past participle.
Okay.
And your example was the question, have you done your homework?
Right.
So no errors here. You correctly used have with the subject, you.
Right.
And the past participle of done. And finally, the rule is had plus past participle.
Okay.
And your example was the question, had they driven a Ferrari?
Yeah.
And again, perfectly correct.
Wow, John, you're doing great.
Yeah, it seems like you've got a good handle on these auxiliary verbs.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of grammar.
Okay.
So, Unit 23, past participle.
Right.
And your notes here, John, are really comprehensive.
They are.
You've noted very clearly that regular verbs form the past participle by adding ed.
Right, just like the simple past tense.
Yeah, you even referenced page 59 for the spelling and phonetic rules associated with adding ed.
That shows that you're paying really close attention to detail.
Yes. which is fantastic. And you also correctly point out that irregular verbs have different forms for the past participle.
Right, and those you just have to memorize.
Yeah, you just got to learn them.
Right.
And you even noted that the list is on page 422.
Good for you.
So it's all there for you.
Absolutely.
So, John, what's really important to understand is that the past participle can be used in many different ways.
Yeah, it's very versatile.
So, as you noted, it can function as an adjective.
Right, to describe a noun.
Yeah. So, for example, a broken window.
Right.
Or he seemed tired.
Yeah, so in the first one, the past participle broken comes before the noun window.
Right. And in the second one, tired comes after the linking verb seemed.
Right.
And we have fancy names for that, attributive and predicative. But you don't need to worry about that too much right now.
Yeah, just knowing how to use them is important.
Yeah, you've got it. And you also clearly differentiated between present participles and past participles when they act as adjectives.
Oh, yeah, that's an important distinction.
Yeah, so remember the present participle ends in "-ing", and it has an active meaning.
Right.
So it's something that causes a feeling.
Exactly.
For example, an interesting book.
Right, the book causes the feeling of interest.
And then the past participle has a passive meaning.
Right.
Describing someone or something that experiences that feeling.
So like, I was interested in the book.
Right, so I am the one who experiences the feeling.
Exactly.
So your examples, interesting, interested, and boring, bored, are perfect illustrations of that difference.
Yeah, those are really good examples.
So really important to keep those straight in your mind.
It's crucial to understand that difference.
Yeah. And you also noted that the past participle is essential for forming the passive voice.
Right.
Which we form using a form of the verb to be plus the past participle.
Like, the email was sent yesterday.
Right.
Perfect example.
And of course, the past participle is crucial for those perfect tenses.
Yes, the present perfect and the past perfect.
Which we've already talked about.
We have.
So good job remembering that.
Yeah, you even made a note about passive forms in the perfect tenses.
Yes, like the project had been completed.
Yeah.
So you're really understanding how all these pieces fit together.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, John, let's look at Unit 24, Present Perfect Simple.
Oh.
So again, very well-structured notes.
Yeah, very.
You start by correctly stating the form, have, has, plus past participle.
Right.
And you emphasize its function as this bridge connecting past actions to the present.
Exactly. Highlighting that those past actions still have relevance today.
Yes. And you also detailed all the different structures.
You have the affirmative, the negative, the interrogative.
Yes, both full and contracted forms.
And you even included how to form negative questions.
Yes.
Really well done, John.
And you even included the short answer structures.
I was impressed.
So this shows a really, really good understanding.
Yeah, of how to construct sentences in the present perfect simple.
Yes, so what's really important to remember about the present perfect simple is that it's not just a past tense.
Right. It's not just about something that happened in the past.
Yeah, we often use it for actions that happen at an unspecified time in the past, but they have this connection to the present.
Yeah, present relevance.
Yes, for example, I have visited that museum.
Right, and that memory or knowledge is still with you.
Yes, and it's also used for actions that started in the past and continue to the present.
Right.
It's like, I have lived in this city for 5 years.
Exactly, and your notes reflect all of this.
We do, which is excellent.
Very impressive.
And then you also included those why questions.
Yes.
That are formed in the present. Perfect.
Right, starting with the question word.
Yes, like where or what.
Right.
Then have, has, and the subject, and then finally the past participle.
So, for example, where have you been?
Exactly. Or what have you learned today?
Perfect.
So you really got all the essential information down.
Yeah, you did. And it's clear from the thoroughness of your notes on both the past participle and the present perfect simple that you were really engaged in Paulo's lessons and you were taking good notes.
Yeah, and those references to those specific page numbers in your grammar book show that you're taking your learning seriously.
You are.
And you're really trying to understand the material.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you included those personal examples in your 7 things to do before you die list really personalizes it.
It does.
It makes it more meaningful.
It does.
So you can connect with it on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And that's a really effective way to learn.
It is.
So, John, just to recap what we've covered today.
Yeah.
We went through your new vocabulary.
We did.
Those tricky pronunciation pairs.
Yeah, those are fun.
We talked about the video and all those amazing experiences.
Yeah.
And how we can use language to describe them.
Yeah.
And then we went over your writing and your personal goals.
And Paulo's feedback.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we looked at auxiliary verbs.
We did.
The past participle and the present perfect simple.
It was a jam-packed session.
It was, but we covered a lot of ground.
We did, and the important thing is that, you're actively participating in your learning.
Right.
That's evident from your notes and from those personal examples.
Absolutely. And that's really going to make a difference, John.
Yes, it is.
You're not just sitting there passively listening. You're actively thinking about the material and connecting it to your own life.
And that's going to help you remember it.
Absolutely.
So keep up that fantastic work.
Yeah, keep it up, John.
So we encourage you to go back and look at your notes again.
Yes.
And revisit those units in your grammar book, units 23 and 24, and also unit 67 on articles.
Right.
And as always, if you have any lingering questions, reach out to Paulo.
Yeah, he's there to help you.
Yeah. So here's a final thought for you, John.
Okay.
Think about how the present perfect simple, which you've clearly mastered,
Yeah, he's got it down,
allows you to talk about, all the things that you've accomplished so far in your English learning journey.
That's a good point.
The vocabulary you've learned, the pronunciation challenges you've overcome,
Right.
the grammar concepts you now understand.
Yeah.
So how would you describe your progress using the present perfect?
Yeah, John, think about that.
I'm sure you have a lot to be proud of.
You do.
So keep up the amazing work, John.
Absolutely, John. It's been such a pleasure to be a part of your learning journey today.
Yes, it has. We'll see you next time.
See you later.